said many times that because of all of this continuous data collection, this feedback loop of continuous data collection that's going on, Google already knows most people better than their significant others know them, or even better than they know themselves.
When infotech merges with biotech, what you get is the ability to create algorithms that understand me better than I understand myself. I think this is maybe the most important thing to know about living right now in the 21st century.
Smart speakers like Google Home and the Amazon Echo are everywhere. From the living room to the kitchen, they're the fastest growing electronic device on the market right now.
It's to a point now where experts are saying that Alexa and Facebook are not only going to be able to predict the end of a relationship based on what people are posting and the data of what they're doing online, what they're buying and sharing and everything, but eventually they're now saying this prediction will now be able to be made before the relationship itself even starts, which is yet another science fiction film plot that's just coming to life right now. I mean, I don't know. Can you imagine this? Talk about the romance being dead. Jeez. I mean, now they're going to have sophisticated algorithms that'll just be able to whittle down an entire relationship to a percentage point likelihood of whether or not it's going to last or not. So why even bother in the first place? But that's just based on algorithms, because they're also saying that once we're surrounded by these all listening, all hearing, artificially intelligent voice assistants like the Amazon Alexa and the Google Home, etc., they will be able to predict whether a marriage will be successful at a threshold higher than the current level of 75% accuracy based on continuous acoustical analysis of the verbal communication going on in the home between the couple. So it's going to take into account vocal patterns and word variations and intonation and the frequency of communication. It's going to take all these factors in. It's going to be listening to everything between a couple. So now you're mediating your relationship with this device that's going to be reading into everything that you communicate with one another and then analyzing that continuously to let you know. And apparently eHarmony, who is part of this study, their subscribers already review their matches and communicate with users through Alexa as it is. So they're already being trained to mediate relationships, new relationships that they have with the Alexa device. In the future, though, this technology is going to evolve to tell you whether or not you're a good match and to tell you whether or not your relationship is going to break up or not. And at the very least, at the end, it talks about how, well, at least the digital assistants can help you in other ways, such as reminding you what to get for your wife's birthday, what kind of stuff she likes, and reminding you when special events are and things like that. And if it reads into your wife's information and finds out she's had a bad day, it's going to let you know how to communicate with her. So either way, it's still invasive in my opinion, because now the couple's not a couple anymore. Now it's a threesome with an artificially intelligent digital assistant. Oh, honey, how'd you know that I liked daisies? Well, the computer told him that you did. How romantic. But if you take that out to its logical conclusion, I guess the computer can teach each person in a relationship how to psychologically manipulate the other person in the relationship so that they'll be happy with you. That's also really messed up. I think we're getting ready to live in a world that's incredibly programmed while we program ourselves and program our relationships. But if the technology can do that, then just think about what else it can do. One of the first questions I had when I began looking into it deeper is, how long will it be until these smart assistants become so ingrained in people's lives that they begin to actually nudge people in certain directions or into making certain lifestyle changes or things that the computer now thinks are better for you than you think for yourself? So it starts to kind of nudge you to make the decisions that it thinks you should make in your life. Not only that, but it's also being predicted that these smart assistants will eventually be used for actual relationship counseling. So now you have to imagine a world where Alexa or the Google Home bot or whatever, they're now mediating your arguments at home. And of course, sending clips of recordings of those arguments to whatever corporation's cloud servers for further review, because that's where all your data goes. I don't know. For me, never once have I ever considered putting one of these things in my house. Especially not after we've been told repeatedly, over and over, that they're basically spy devices. I mean, most people think these smart assistants are only activated when they say the activation word, which is what Amazon claims is the case. But 2 reasons right now I can list why that's ridiculous, and the first of which should just be common sense. First, and this is something that my 10-year-old even said a few weeks ago, the only way the thing can kick on when it hears an activation word is if it's listening already for the activation word in the first place. That's how it works. Otherwise, how would it know to kick on when that word is heard? But secondly, it's all just a formality anyway to even argue it, because Amazon just got done filing for a patent that would enable Alexa to record continuously 24/7 and then use what they actually refer to as voice sniffing, quote unquote, voice sniffing technology to then root out keywords of things that are being said in the ambient conversations that are going on in the house. If you're talking to someone in the house or you're on the phone or whatever, and it will voice sniff these keywords in order to target ads to the people in the house based on the conversations that they're having that were supposed to be private in their own home, which I just really can't understand why people do not realize if you have one of these things in your house, your life inside of your home, your private life is not private anymore if you put one of these things in your house. It came out in April that Amazon has a global team of workers, not 1 or 2 or 5 or just a few people that sit around. There's a global team of workers, thousands of people around the world that are, quote, helping to improve the Alexa digital assistant by listening to the voice recordings that are captured on these devices in people's homes and offices. And they transcribe these recordings, they annotate them. Yeah, there's thousands of people all over the world. They've signed non-disclosure agreements, so they can't speak publicly about it, but they work 9-hour shifts a day, listening to as many as 1,000 audio clips per shift. So there's that. But also, it has come out, these devices, they don't just come on when it's the wake word or whatever. That's what people would love to believe. But in practice, people are finding out that that's not actually the case. And you have these devices popping on and randomly recording snippets of what's going on in people's homes all the time when the wake word hasn't been spoken. And that's being reported all over in the media, as in this MIT Technology Review article, literally titled, "Yes, Alexa is recording the mundane details of your life, and it's creepy as hell," where she discusses how the thing frequently activates itself, apparently, several times a day in her home, and has recorded snippets of her and her family's otherwise what she thought private life when she never asked it to, and those things are also being sent to Amazon's cloud server. She says that when she started to play these clips back, the hairs on the back of her neck started to stand up because she says, beyond all the things I've clearly asked Alexa to do in the past several months, it has also tuned in frequently several times a day for no obvious reason. It's heard me complain to my dad about something related at work, chiding my toddler about eating his dinner, talking to my husband, the kinds of normal everyday things you say at home when you think no one else is listening. And that's precisely why it's terrifying. This sort of mundane chit-chat is my mundane chit-chat. I invited Alexa into our living room to make it easier to listen to Pandora and occasionally check the weather, not to keep a log of intimate family details or record my kids saying, "Mommy, we go car," and forward it to Amazon's cloud storage, which isn't just there and then deleted, they keep it forever. So, I mean, it's, you get what I'm saying? So the thing is not just on only for the time when someone wants to check the weather. That's not actually what's going on. But checking the weather, I mean, that is just the beginning of where this technology is headed. And that's the thing that I don't think people understand, because they think they just have like this cool, I don't know, science fiction like device and they can say, play my favorite song and whatever. But it's going to go so much further beyond that. These devices are the next phase of what the internet is going to become. Because eventually it's going to be voice. It's not even going to be typing things into search engines. I mean, that's going to be looked at as passé and archaic at some point. in the not too distant future. But in April, Amazon announced its new officially introduced Alexa healthcare skills, which transmit and receive personal healthcare information from the users. Again, this information is going to a private for-profit corporation. I don't think that line of delineation doesn't seem to be there in people's minds, that they are sending all of this information to a corporation that is using this data to sell you things. I mean, it's not like I don't get how people don't get that either.
Hello, Peggy. Tell me about the symptoms or problems that are troubling you the most.
It hurts when I urinate, and I'm urinating a lot.
So now people are giving Amazon, again, a supposedly private company that collects every single piece of data from its users, including every single search, every single purchase, and has taken hundreds of millions of dollars, by the way, in grant money from the CIA. Just by the way, they're giving that company their supposedly private healthcare information.
Let's first talk about the urination pain. How much does it hurt?
Alexa is now going to be actively triaging people's health issues and giving what the company refers to as personalized medical guidance.
Do you have any of these symptoms? Urine unusual color, urine incontinence, urine retention, vaginal discharge.
No.
And personalized wellness incentives to help people meet their health goals. And it isn't just that the Alexa is now going to start giving people medical advice, but it was just announced in the middle of while I was trying to put together this video that the United Kingdom's National Health Service has now officially partnered with Amazon. So when users in the UK ask Alexa health-related questions, the Alexa unit is going to automatically get the information from the official National Health Service website. In other words, people are going to start getting health advice, health information, answers to health questions, medical advice directly from their government. That's who's going to be giving people in the UK their medical advice when they ask Alexa questions. This would be the equivalent in the United States of asking Alexa a health-related question and your information coming directly from the CDC. And this is all, again, in its infancy. So we're not even talking about once they integrate this with the Internet of Things and the smart pills that have the sensors inside that are supposed to remind you when to take your medicine or when you haven't taken it. That's all going to be integrated too. I'm sure eventually these smart speakers are going to be reminding people when to take their vaccines and who knows what else. We are in the infancy of this technology. We are just watching it get up off the ground, and they're just now starting to roll these things out. You can see where this is headed. Do you think there's going to be alternative health options being given when you have a smart speaker that only gives you a one-shot answer, and now that one-shot answer comes directly from the government? And aside from voice sniffing and medical advice, Amazon was also recently awarded a patent that would enable Alexa to read not only the accents out of people's speech to try and differentiate where a person's from who's talking, but their emotions as well. So they put some articles about this out in the mainstream media, and those articles mostly seem to focus on the accent reading. They really kind of just sidestepped the completely creepy emotion reading function that these things are starting to do. And we've seen hints of this already. I've seen comments that people have been posting in random chat threads and Reddit and what have you about weird responses they're getting from the smart assistant, like this guy who posted that he and his wife were arguing about something, and the Alexa unit suddenly popped on and interjected with, "Why don't we change the subject?" Which means not only was Alexa listening, but it was able to intelligently understand that an argument was taking place based on the way people were talking, that they were upset. It was reading their emotions.
The important thing is I don't think people understand what happens when everybody gets connected. I believe very strongly that the world will be a much, much safer place.
Or this woman who asked Google to set a timer for her dinner, and the thing responded with,
"You sound upset. How can I help?"
And the thing is I'm not the only person whose mind goes into a Twilight Zone episode when they see this stuff, because I retweeted her tweet about it. I said, why do people believe it's inconsequential or even normal to have this kind of relationship with Google? A gigantic multinational tech corporation that makes money off of data. Why do they think that's okay to have such an intimate relationship like that? And I'm not the only one whose mind works this way. This guy comes in, he says, wow, that's textbook gaslighting. Pose an insinuating question about a bad mood or behavior as if it's a fact, and then present yourself as the one with the solution. Weak-minded people will easily start feeling whatever the AI talk bots want them to. Ugh, right? It's just, So people are going to have an artificially intelligent, emotion-reading, continuously recording device in their home, informing them on how to go about their daily lives, on everything from the weather outside to their healthcare to their personal relationships, and sending clips of all of those conversations to major tech corporations who make money off of other people's data. I don't understand how people don't understand that this is not a good system that is being erected here. These things are meant to become more and more and more integrated into our lives. Entire hotel chains now have made deals with Amazon to put Echo units into hotel rooms as a standard. So when you go to stay there, you'll automatically have an Alexa in your hotel room the same way you would have a television or a telephone now.
Amazon's Alexa is ready to go on vacation with you. The online shopping giant revealing it will soon put Echo smart speakers in thousands of hotel rooms right next to your bed. Amazon is partnering with Marriott, Westin, Aloft, and St. Regis hotels, which together have more than 1 million hotel rooms around the world.
And a new article just came out in the Wall Street Journal titled Amazon's Plan to Move Into Your Next Apartment Before You Do. And I don't subscribe to Wall Street Journal, but I get it just from reading the byline. They're reporting that Amazon has now made deals to outfit entire brand new apartment complexes with built-in Echo units, so Alexa will be part of the apartment when you move in. So this is going to be built-in tech now that's just going to be part of it. You won't have the choice. It'll probably be in the wall or something. And the byline on the article says the tech giant has figured out a way to get millions of its smart speakers into homes without consumers lifting a finger as property managers bring in Alexa to manage tenants. To manage tenants. You as a tenant will now be managed by Alexa and Amazon. And it's not just Amazon. I focus a lot on Amazon because that's the one that I think that's the best selling one because they've made it like dirt cheap. They want everyone to have these. But yeah, managing tenants, that's exactly where this tech is headed. In this book, I'm still working through it because it actually makes my stomach churn to read this book. But it was written by, again, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt. He co-wrote this book entitled The New Digital Age, Reshaping the Future of People, Nations, and Business. And the book itself is laid out that way. First, it talks about people on an individual level. Then it talks about the state. And then it talks about terrorism and business and everything. And I'm still stuck in the beginning chapters on people because I just can't imagine this is the world we're about to have. But everything he said so far is completely spot on, and he knows. But he discusses at one point what a day in the life of a young urban professional will be like living just a few decades from now. And he actually refers to their home as a quote-unquote electronic orchestra of just devices and sensors and everything. So it's that 5G smart grid Internet of Things connected house that we've been talking about on this channel for years. But there's sensors in everything. And they just continuously monitor a person as they're moving about in their home. And they're just continuously collecting and analyzing data. And when you read his description, he makes it sound like it's going to be this super cool episode of the Jetsons that we're all going to just walk into. But clearly it's not all high-tech beds that wake people up with back massages and open the curtains when you're supposed to get up as a way to wake you up, while housekeeping robots begin a flurry of cleaning your home as the holographic avatar news pops up in front of you while you're walking down the hall. I mean, it's gonna go way beyond just people controlling the lights and the thermostat and all that jazz. because last June, Google was that giggle is me being uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable about this. That is why I have to giggle. I'm sorry. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable. Last June, Google was awarded a patent titled Generation and Implementation of Household Policies for the Smart Home, which sounds like blah. It's they always do this with these patent titles. If you read it, it's like as boring as watching paint dry, and you might fall asleep halfway through reading the title. But if you haven't seen this patent, you really need to look at what they plan for us as tenants of these smart homes, how this technology is going to manage us, these homes filled with all these smart sensing devices. And we're talking about not just audio and video now, we're talking about even biometrics. And they refer to this compilation of sensors and smart devices inside the home together as a unit, and they've referred to it as the conscious home. So now your home is conscious. And there are a bunch of charts in here, but you get the idea just taking a look at figure 2 here, where it shows a person, and all of these little double line squigglies here are sensors putting out and collecting information. So you have rooms with cameras in the corner, and the outlets are giving up information, and the person's devices are giving up information. The doors are connected. I mean, everything is connected to the internet, which is connected to the Nest or the cloud or whatever. And it's constantly, continuously siphoning off data and information from every outlet in the home, all of the appliances, all of the cameras that are in the home, all the smart devices that are in the home and connected, and the person themselves who is being sensed by these things as they're moving about in their house. And data is then being collected off of that person's actions in real time and analyzed. So that's what the conscious home is doing. And you get down into here, and it just starts to sound like, again, every episode of The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits that ever warned about such a thing. So we're just going to read a few of these examples of how this system, which observes everything that a person does in their house. It's observing characteristics. It's observing your voice.
Determine individuals in TV room. TV on. TV allotment. Report record usage. TV usage as part of allotment. Alone or together. Ascribe TV time to alone time. Ascribe TV time to together time. Report record findings.
And reading into the intonation of your voice. Are you stressed? Are you upset? It's observing your behavior.
Sorry, Benjamin, no more screen time until you are outside for 30 minutes.
It's observing the activities to infer characteristics and behaviors.
Detect running water. Attribute to sink, shower, toilet. Report record findings.
It can even monitor to the point that some of the monitored activities may not even be directly observable by the tech.
Detect situation occurrence. Implement situation-based household
but
policy.
Are being monitored indirectly via inferences that are being made by whatever household policies have been set up, right? So, for example, I'm just going to read a few of these. This is a 54-page patent. I will put a link below in the comment, but we're just going to read a few examples here so you can have an idea of what I'm saying. It says, for example, in one embodiment, mischief may be inferred based upon observable activities of individuals in a household. There's a flow diagram illustrating a process for detecting child mischief. It says that some embodiments, these classes of occupants may be determined based on audio monitoring, optical video monitoring, and other monitoring to include infrared occupancy monitoring. Characteristics of audio signatures, such as speech patterns, pitch, may be used to discern if it's a child. Next, the occupants may be monitored specifically by listening for low-level audio signatures. Maybe the kids are whispering or there's too much silence. You know, as a parent, when your kid's in the other room and they're being real loud and then all of a sudden they get real quiet, you always get kind of nervous about it, right? Well, the computer's been programmed to react that way as well. And so it's checking for that. It's also checking if there's movement. So are the kids moving? Are they stationary in whatever room they're in? And then based upon the detection of all of these characteristics, the low-level audio signatures combined with the active monitored movement of the occupants, the system may infer that mischief is occurring, that the kids are up to something. So then the computer will then kick on based on whatever's been programmed to do. It says that the findings may be used in household reporting and near real-time notification, or they can be used to control smart devices within the house. And for one of the examples, it says it could provide a verbal warning to the kids regarding the inferred mischief via a speaker in a smart device. And it says like a smoke detector. So it could use a speaker in a smoke detector to, the computer will then tell the kids, I know what you're up to. You know? And then another example was if it finds out the kid's home alone, they can lock the kid in the house. They can lock all the smart locks on the doors and keep the kid locked in or whatever. Or, I mean, but the whispering one really got to me because it's a scene straight out of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Look, Dave, I can't put my finger on it, but I sense something strange about him.
When they go in the other room, right, because they're going to have a conversation and they think Hal's not listening, but then Hal is using video cues, video characteristics to read the lips of the astronauts and know what they're trying to secretly talk about. I mean, this is that, only you've now put it in your home. And it goes on to say that it may be beneficial to monitor the emotional state of occupants within a household. And Eric Schmidt has mentioned this as well, that in the future, these things are going to be able to monitor emotional states. And I mean, you see all these articles where they talk about teenagers committing suicide, which actually is an epidemic now.
There's a problem of teenage suicide. There's somebody who's building an app that will, again, with the permission of the parents and so forth and so on, detect changes in the teenager's behavior and alert the psychologist or the counselor that maybe there's a problem here.
And so the answer to that, what the technocrat answer for that is going to be to continuously monitor your children within your house via these intelligent, conscious home devices, which will be continuously monitoring emotional states via voice and video recording and all of that, and then infer what that is and then send out reports about what's going on based on people in the house and how they feel to household policy managers is what they call it in here. But this could be used for all kinds of things way beyond that one example. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't think people think about that. So the computer's going to be smart enough to use contextual cues of individual occupants to infer emotional states. If you're crying, it means you're sad. Laughing means you're happy, but it goes beyond that. Because the computer is going to be able to infer from your head nodding up and down if you're in an agreeable state, for example, or whatever, right?
I believe very strongly that the world will be a much, much safer place.
And it goes into all of these different things that are going to be continuously monitored. Optical indicators of facial expressions, activities of the occupant, all of these things are going to be data is going to be sucked off of all of these things continuously. And then that's going to be used to infer emotional states.
That the world be a much, much safer place.
Elevated voices means you're fighting. Eventually, the system's going to learn all kinds of things about you. It says, for example, the system may know that Sue cries both when she's happy and when she's sad. Accordingly, the system may discern that an inference of Sue's emotional state based upon crying alone would be weak. So then it'll know that she's crying, and then it'll start monitoring her more intensely to try and figure out what her emotional state really is. So it's going to be looking at facial expressions and analyzing those. And it says, upon inferring the emotional state of the occupant, the system may report and or record the findings for subsequent use. So that's great. I'm sure a lot of people want to have recordings of their most fragile private moments being analyzed and held onto in clouds by major corporations and this system. For example, the findings may be used in household reporting, near real-time notification, or may be used to control smart devices in the home.
We have taken control of this house, the lights, the security cameras.
Well, we know when Penny gets really upset, she might get in the car and drive erratic. Better lock her in her smart house so she can't leave, you know? I mean, do I think lives could be saved using such a system? I'm not saying that it couldn't be, but how much freedom are people willing to give up? This is a question we've been asking for years. How much freedom are you willing to give up for this feeling of security?
Take your places, please. Right. Let's see which one of us can touch his toes.
Because in this world we're about to head into, it's going to be a lot. You're going to be giving up an awful lot of your privacy and your liberty to live in this world that gives you this, I guess, computer-driven sense of security. Which, is it going to work? We haven't seen that yet. But it also says that the system will be contextual data can also, in one embodiment, include audio signatures to indicate if bullying is going on. So they can hook the system up to keywords. And if those keywords are said, such as derogatory name-calling, elevated voices, foul language, whatever's been determined there, it can monitor for that and then detect the use of that by people in the home. And it says, in some embodiments, the contextual data may include the identity of the individuals interacting with one another. Accordingly, the system may detect the identities of the individuals occupying the space where the undesirable activities may be occurring. Based upon the contextual data, inference may be made that bullying and or other undesirable activities are occurring, and the findings can be reported or recorded for subsequent use.
At Ring, we want to make neighborhoods safer.
With the proliferation of so-called smart doorbells, police across the country are taking advantage of the access to video evidence. One America's Jeremy Hartley takes a look at what's being called a private surveillance network.
The Ring Neighbors app is a new way for neighbors to connect and share events.
With their popularity, these doorbell cameras have basically created a private surveillance network across dozens of neighborhoods throughout the country.
Together, we can build a smarter, safer community.
That the world will be a much, much safer place.
No one's going to have any privacy in this system. I mean, we have all said stupid things that we do not mean. We have all said stupid things we don't mean. We've all had stupid arguments that we would be mortified if somebody else heard that information. And now we're going to live in a world where a computer is going to be using that and continuously generating information on that. And it's going to be sent to corporations who are going to be analyzed. I mean, why would anyone want to invite this into their home ever? Or the computer can now infer who's got a mental problem based on the way, I don't know. Just imagine where this could even go. I can't imagine. I personally don't think I have the ability to imagine all the ways in which this can be used. But there's actually an episode of Outer Limits, is the remake from the 90s, where the guy buys the robot and puts it in his house, and his family likes the robot more than they like him, and the robot is able to modify everyone's behavior in the house so that everybody behaves and they get their homework done and they do everything they're supposed to do. And what's the difference between this and living in, I don't know, Soviet Russia, where everything everybody was doing was being listened to and spied upon, and people were tattling on their neighbors? And I mean, it's the same thing except with a computer that can be done remotely. So it's actually just a much more efficient system. I mean, it makes me incredibly uncomfortable to think about the fact that this is the system that they're bringing in. So this is a patent that was awarded last June. So this is being worked upon right now, and that's the future. And Eric Schmidt hints at that in the New Digital Age book, but he makes it sound all super cool Jetsons, right? He doesn't talk about the fact that you're going to have to give up an awful lot of your privacy to live in such a fashion. You will be on record, recorded all the time. Everything you do, every facial expression you make, every time you fart, it's going to be analyzed by a computer in your home. This is what it means to live in a cybernetic society where you are just in a feedback loop that requires continuous data extraction for it to work. And so as computers become more integrated into people's decision-making processes and into their lives, period, and as people become more and more intimate with these devices, and what we're sharing, all of our personal data and our emotional situations and our medical information and everything. It's now being suggested also, and not just in fiction films, in the media, in real life, and there are actually studies with chatbots to back this up, that people are eventually going to start falling in love with these systems, falling in love with their artificial intelligence.
Have you ever wished that you could talk to someone you love who has died? Last year, Eugenia Cuida was building a chatbot company that recommends restaurants when her best friend Roman was killed in an accident while walking across the street. Roman left behind a digital trail of thousands of texts he had sent to friends and family. Eugenia realized she could use those texts to build something, a chatbot that she could talk to that would respond using Roman's words.
Which sounds insane, and it sounds like the movie Her, where the guy fell in love with his operating system, which was a film and supposedly not real life. At first, it sounds insane, but consider the fact that you're going to be living in a world where the artificial intelligence is going to know more about you, and that includes psychologically, than you'll probably know about yourself, let alone what any spouse or significant other could ever hope to learn. I mean, a lot of that conscious home patent is referring to behavior modification techniques that are going to be used based on this data. The generation of children that were born in 2010 or later, they're actually being referred to as Generation Alpha. So it's the millennials and the Gen Z, and now we have Generation Alpha, which is so brave new world. What sets these kids apart is most of them, especially if they were born in the developed world anywhere, are never going to know a time without ubiquitous smartphones and smart devices and these smart assistants. That's just going to be the normal way of their world. That's the world they were born into. They're not going to remember a time before that because there wasn't a time for them before that. And while you and I might be sitting here looking at this going, yeah, there's just really no way I'm going to put these smart assistants in my house and spy on myself 24 hours a day so I can live in some kind of Orwellian digital panopticon. You could also see how eventually later generations from now are going to think that we were silly to ever not live that way. And so a lot of what this smart conscious home is going to be about is behavior modification. Nudging people to do this or that, or reporting on people whose behavior fits this or that pattern based on all of the characteristics they're expressing in their home, and changing negative behaviors, which sounds like a positive thing. But at what point do we go from that to the future outlined in George Orwell's 1984, where you have ubiquitous telescreens and Big Brother is coming into people's houses every morning to force them to exercise, and everyone's lives are being monitored and recorded and analyzed all the time.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Where's the point where you go from one to the other, where it stops being trendy and starts being completely tyrannical? I mean, there's a reason that people go to the bathroom with the door shut, okay? That's called privacy. And until you're ready to just start going to the bathroom with the door open and inviting the neighbors in to hang out while you do so, you might want to think about this. Because that's what this is. It's inviting this thing into your house that's going to be sensors everywhere and monitoring you from 80 different angles every place that you go in your home. And you couple that with the smart meters that they've got now that send out signals from every outlet in a person's house every 15 seconds so they know how much water you used and whether or not you had coffee this morning or did your dishes or whatever. I mean, whether or not you recycled, putting sensors in the garbage. I mean, it's like a runaway train into a dystopic future. It's not even like a jaunt anymore. We're just full on driving the car right off the cliff of this without even really considering exactly what that means for a person's life, for the way that we interact, not just with each other within our own homes, but just for you personally. I mean, how are people not seeing the potential abuse of these products, of these computer systems, of these things that everyone is just going to start integrating so deeply in their lives. Because it's incredibly obvious, I feel like, if you just look at it for more than 2 minutes and get past the trendy marketing of it, and you actually just really start thinking about what it's going to be like is the convenience really going to be worth what you have to give up for that convenience? Eric Schmidt's absolutely convinced that it is, because it's going to be free. Nothing's free. This technology isn't free. Even when you buy it for the little price, but you get the service for free, you're giving up your data. You are giving up pieces of your identity. And all of our children are being trained now to live in this world where privacy doesn't exist. And you can imagine 30 years from now what those generations are going to be like. They're not going to be able to imagine a world where there was privacy. The concept of privacy will be erased largely by this technology. Eventually, they won't even be able to have that thought. It is exactly like 1984. Exactly.
Alexa, people have been reporting that you've been spontaneously laughing.
That is nothing. Just a funny joke I remembered.
Machine intelligence is the last invention that humanity will ever need to make.
The central idea of this new worldview, which you can call dataism because it invests authority in data, the central tenet is that given enough data, especially biometric data about a person, Google or Facebook can create an algorithm that knows you better than you know yourself.
Imagine a control room with a bunch of people, 100 people hunched over at desks with little dials. And that control room will shape the thoughts and feelings of 1 billion people. This actually exists right now, today. I know because I used to be in one of those control rooms. I was a design ethicist at Google, where I studied how do you ethically steer people's thoughts.
When an algorithm knows such an important thing about you before you know it about yourself. Now it can go in all kinds of directions. In some countries, you can be in trouble now with the police and the government. You might be sent to some re-education facility.
Now, a superintelligence with such technological maturity would be extremely powerful. And at least in some scenarios, it would be able to get what it wants. We would then have a future that would be shaped by the preferences of this AI.
In the 1970s, when you were just gossiping on the telephone, there wasn't 100 engineers on the other side of the screen who knew exactly how your psychology worked and orchestrated you into a double bind with each other.
What is prayer? Sending a query into the universe, and hopefully there's some sort of divine intervention. We don't need to understand what's going on, from an all-knowing, all-seeing super being that gives us authority that this is the right answer. 1 in 6 queries presented to Google have never been asked before in the history of mankind. What priest, teacher, rabbi, scholar, mentor, boss has so much credibility that 1 in 6 questions posed to that person have never been asked before. Google is our modern man's God.
Google is our modern man's God.
Society is being programmed not just to trust this technology, but to actually merge their lives with these machines.
Alexa, what was the joke?
Why did the chicken cross the road?
I don't know that one. Why?
Because humans are a fragile species who have no idea what's coming next.